Can you hear me?
The equipment over here to Warrensburg, put it in the building in Warrensburg. I was like, that equipment's not worth the time and effort to pick it up and move it.
Can anyone hear me?
Stand by. Nolan, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Does he have video? Does he have video? If there's any vote, he won't be able to vote. I don't know if he's vote on it tonight.
Do you have video you can turn on?
It's telling me that the host won't let me, or the host has stopped video.
All right, hold on.
Raise your hand.
Yeah, I think you need your phone now.
It was not.
Because it's gonna be that. I saw it, and I said, do I need this? I go, no, I don't need this tonight. It's just laying in the car.
Did you hear all my gift?
Yes.
I thought it turned out really.
Yeah, that was really nice.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll have, call it, show roll call, and then adoption of agenda, and then you're done.
All right, well, I got 4:30, so we're gonna get this started.
Brooks,
Yes?
Holmberg,
Here.
Lund,
Here.
Kushner,
Here.
Jacobs.
Here. Okay, adoption of agenda.
Move to adopt.
Brooks,
Yes?
Holmberg,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Kushner,
Yes.
Jacobs.
Yes. All right. Yes. You're starting?
Yeah, we'll get started. So first of all, Mayor and City Council, thank you for the opportunity to come before you this evening and talk about our possible GO bond ballot language. What we're going to do an overview of the conversations and discussions that we've had up to this point, and what's kind of brought us to where we are today, and what we want to do in January and getting a ballot issue on in April. We don't need any action this evening. We are just here to have a discussion and have City Council give staff direction regarding the ballot language, what we want it to say exactly, and how you want that ordinance to read when we bring it forward for our first reading on January 11th. So, launch into, in 2017 and 2019, the city hired ETC to conduct a statistically valid community survey. At that time, in both 2017 and 2019, the biggest issue the city faced in the next 5 years, according to our community, was the road repair, maintenance, and expansion. So 58% in 2017 and 63% in 2019. Overall maintenance of city streets and sidewalks, 46% of folks were satisfied, and you can see that overall, the flow of traffic on city streets, approximately 1/3 of folks were satisfied in 2017, and in 2019, about 2/5. Diving a little bit deeper into that, when we look at the timing of traffic signals, we did not gain a lot of traction in that area. We stayed satisfied even though we did some upgrades in 2019. And we did not improve it really in any of the other areas that were related to major city streets, traffic flow, or even on Maguire there. The overall satisfaction with traffic flow on Maguire is about 1/4 of folks are satisfied. And I think that you all are capable of doing math and understand that means about 75% of folks are not satisfied. We specifically asked the question if residents would be supportive of tax to improve roads or bridges. 60% in 2017 said they would support a tax, and 62% in 2019 said they would as well. I think the most important question that we asked in the community survey is, do you think the city of Warrensburg is continually improving as a place to live? And 77% said yes. This is credit to the vision the governing body has set out for us, for our supportive community partners and our dedicated staff that serve each and every day. So just wanted to highlight this question to remind you all that you are doing a great job and we continue to do great work for the city of Warrensburg and our community. So to review some of the studies that got us to this point, the citywide traffic study was in 2008. At that time, we were looking for existing traffic conditions and they made some recommendations for short, intermediate, and long-term improvements. Many of those short-term improvements have been made, such as timing of signals and implementing better right-of-way access management. However, many of those long-range improvements, including the reconstruction of intersections and widening of Maguire to increase capacity and safety, there were no funds to do that. So we did not do that in 2008. Doing a little bit more studying, we did the Maguire Street Corridor study in 2012. Again, they laid out short-term and long-term solutions for improving traffic flow on Maguire. At that time, they suggested upgrading signals to synchronize traffic flow at peak times. But again, many of the long-range improvements that they recommended to improve traffic flow on Maguire, there were no funds to do any of those. Again, we keep studying and we keep looking at it, knowing that this is an issue and not wanting it to fall out of anyone's mind or off anyone's minds. Not that it would, if they have to get from the north end of town to the south end of town here in Warrensburg. But in 2016, we did Maguire Street Phase 1A. This was a conceptual study to take a look at what was identified to be the bottleneck or one of the choke point on Maguire, which is the bridge that goes over Highway 50. Even after the 13 bypass project, traffic volumes are still high and congestion continues. So the existing conditions of the bridge over Highway 50, we know that bridge is nearing the end of its useful life. It is 2 feet below current standard vertical clearance. The study in 2016 showed that most intersections operate at a B or C level. This is acceptable levels of service, but if any increase in traffic at any of those intersections is going to move it into the D or F category. Trying to plan for future growth, they proposed 3 alternatives and the diverging diamond was selected. So that is how they came to the conclusion that a diverging diamond would be the interchange that would be needed over Highway 50. Again, no funds are available to do such a large capital improvement project in our community. There was conversation in 2017 to issue bonds to upgrade signals to synchronize our traffic lights. But without adding additional capacity to Maguire, we will not really ever see any relief to the congestion or traffic flow problems that we are seeing. So in September 23, 2019, again, we had a very similar meeting to what we are having today, and we talked about a capital project presentation. They talked about the Maguire Bridge and the 50 interchange. We talked about street and stormwater improvements on Maguire, other street projects, City Hall expansion, Fire Station 3, Young Street Corridor, the Community Civic Center, and some other smaller projects were discussed at that September 23rd meeting. And then this last September, in September of 2020, we presented some revenue options. And Marcella had covered the current tax revenue that was collected and what some of our possible options were for generating additional revenue moving forward. At that time, council had given staff the direction to look into renewing the debt service levy that we had passed and moved forward with in 2017 when we did the signal upgrades as well as Veterans Road. So, are there any questions about how we got to where we are today? Okay. Just wanted to do a brief overcap.
Well, and remember the bridge also does not meet the current federal standards for height levels as well.
Yeah, that's what I meant by the 2 foot vertical clear.
Yeah, so just a difference in terminology.
So, we talk through these scenarios,
I have a quick question. So the Maguire Bridge doesn't make the height requirements. What about the other two bridges going over 50 that run through Warrensburg?
I do not know the answer to that question. I'll have to do some research on that.
I'm sure they're the same situation. I can't imagine them not being.
Yeah, we have to do some research on
I
it.
think that one's
Are they
the
higher?
lowest one.
PCA
Yeah, because
Is much newer.
Yeah, and
That's true.
Holden Street, I believe, meets the height because it doesn't even have a height signage on it.
Oh, okay.
because I know also that there are some trucks when they are traveling along 50, they actually have to exit and use the exit ramp to cross 50 and then go down. So I will
Jim-
double check on that, Councilmember Brooks, and get back to you, but I think we might be okay on those other two bridges.
Okay. Hey, Jim, could you say, I heard you speaking, but I couldn't make out what you were saying. What was that?
PCA is a fairly newer bridge and it's well high enough for the normal permitted loads that go through. Young Street, like Danielle said, I've seen lots of trucks go up and over the ramps because they won't fit underneath it. Holden Street is considerably higher. It doesn't even, if I remember right, Rich, it doesn't even have signage on it, does it? So it's tall. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. I appreciate your input.
So as we launch into these scenarios and we talk through these scenarios, I want to caution us to not get too caught up in the specific projects. What I'm trying to demonstrate here is the magnitude of improvement that we can make with this dollar amount, with these dollar amounts. With a $17 million 20-year bond, we would have leverage to go after several different grant opportunities offered at the state and federal level. This would make our local dollars go much further. We have talked briefly about infra grants, and to be competitive at that infra grant level, we would need a possible, 40 to 50% match, local match for those dollars is what makes us competitive for those. I have a meeting with MoDOT on January 5th, and where we can talk through some other possible funding opportunities that they may have that would, again, help us stretch our $17 million to get more improvements and help us pay for the Highway 50 interchange over Young and allow us to then use some of our local dollars to do some of the other projects that we want to do if we are able to go out for that $17 million. I think with that 17 million for 20 years offers us a lot of flexibility to be able to achieve what we're trying to set forward without having to go back every 5 years and to the people and ask for another 5 years and another 5 years and another 5 years. I really think this would allow us to take advantage. So scenario 2, this would be $8.5 million over 10 years. That puts us right at that 40% match to do Highway 50 interchange over Young Avenue. That doesn't leave us a lot of money to do any of the other projects. So if we decided, so we have two options. We could either go ahead and put all of those bond proceeds into the interchange, or we could do a couple of these other projects. We might be able to get some state funding for help at DD, where Maguire runs into DD. And then we can also do some improvements and extend the Cooper Boulevard extension to, punch that through past the Garden Walk at Magnolia Ridge and improve that intersection right there in front of Walmart as well. Again, this scenario is dependent on being able to get some help, some state dollars or some federal dollars. And that $8.5 million, being able to come to the table with some funds is going to be very beneficial to us. Scenario 3. So this is $4.25 million at 5 years. This is similar to what we did in 2017 when we did the signal upgrades as well as the veterans roads. We would be able to possibly, this $4.25 million doesn't really give us any flexibility or any leverage to go to the state and federal level to ask for matching funds to to be competitive at an IFA grant or any of those other grant levels. So we would really be on the hook for just investing our own dollars and getting improvements with our own dollars. The resurfacing of Maguire that is up there, that is truly just a mill and overlay. That does not include any kind of stormwater improvements on Maguire. So just with that $4.25 million, the price tag that we saw on scenario 1 with the 4.9 and the 5.6, that's really what it's going to take to do a section with the stormwater improvements and widening there on Maguire. So we would really only be able to do a mill and overlay, and not addressing stormwater on Maguire is going to turn what should be a 10 to 12 year improvement into a 5 to 7 year improvement. And again, we have a couple smaller projects, local projects that we would be able to attack with the 4.25 million there. But again, if we want the flexibility to go for those grants, be competitive, we really need to go for that 17 million over 20 years, or the 8.5 over 20. So are there any questions about the scenarios?
No, I think scenario 1 there is probably your better as a 3 there. I mean, as far as if we accomplish everything we're thinking we want to accomplish.
Well, and we still have flexibility inside of that. If things change or bids are a little higher, or we don't get matched from MoDOT or infra grants, and so it can be changed. It's just a matter of, do we want to do large batches and have the flexibility to get some major things done, or do we want to go in small batches and be limited by, time and it costing more in the future? So I agree. Scenario 1 is the most logical. Some of those people just need to understand that some of those projects may change as we get bids back and engineering is done and infra grants and matches and stuff like that. But knowing that it's going to be invested into some type of infrastructure, I think is the important way to sell it.
Right.
It's nice that we have some of the engineering already done. It just needs to be touched up. So we've already spent a lot of that money on several of these projects.
If I remember right, in 2017 or 2018, we had a discussion about the bridge.
17.
And it was 17?
Oh, well, that's whenever you voted, we got it passed for the ones that are really
Correct. So 17. And at 17, that was an $18 million project.
Correct.
So that's an example of, we don't move soon, this is going to be a $25 million project. So
That's a good point. Thank you for pointing out about Mayor Jacobs. This is an estimated cost. These are numbers from 2023.
right.
So we have built inflation into that. Also, there is a good chunk of contingency built into all of these numbers because we don't know what we're going to get into when we do start doing construction and engineering. Okay.
And we discussed at the previous meeting the kind of the scheduling and our how much bond levy we have available. How does the rest of the council feel about tying that up for 20 years? I know we have a few things that are going to drop off. I think one around 3 and one around 5. But I'd like to hear what you guys are thinking about that. Or am I?
Before we launch
Just
into that
remembering.
conversation, can Marcella go through her piece of the presentation? Because I think she's going to provide more information to help you all have a good conversation about the question that Nolan is asking.
Okay, all right.
Because my computer goes back to sleep.
Waiting with all the money.
She knows where to find it at least.
Got some ideas here. So Danielle went through the scenarios on some of the funding, and just a refresher of the current 5-year community investment plan that was adopted with the 21 budget talks about the Maguire interchange being a $17 million project. the Clark Street to DD Highway and Spirit Trail at a 9.5 million, and the south side of the 50 highway ramps to Gage Street at a 12 million. So those are just some pieces that are in that 5-year community investment plan as we plan forward and work towards, how we're going to make everything happen. And remember, in the 2021 budget, the transportation fund, which is your gas tax, your vehicle sales tax, your vehicle fees, that generates about $650,000 a year, and that provides for just your maintenance of your streets. That's all it does. It doesn't provide for any construction or any of that. Plus, that's just to kind of maintain existing streets at a semi-existing level. Also in the 21 budget is the half-cent sales tax money, which primarily generates about $1.6 million a year. The use tax is between $175,000 and $200,000 a year, and the majority of that money is used to pay the debt service payment for the 2017 certificates of participation money, and those bonds do not pay off until after the sales tax expires. So the sales tax expires, if you remember, in 2025, and those bonds pay off in 2029. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But that 1.7 million a year in revenue is what's used to pay those bonds going forward. So one of the things that Councilmember Brooks had asked was the existing debt and how long it's scheduled out for. So the 2017 general obligation bonds for fiscal year 2021 and 2022, those debt payments are just over $1 million. It's $1.3 million in 2020 that we paid, and then $1.020 million for fiscal year 21. That completes the 5-year pay down on the street portion. So for fiscal years 23 through 27, those debt payments drop significantly to $245,000. Where the proposal on the 20-year $17 million is to maintain that existing debt revenue at a little over $1 million and would maintain that debt level, upon issuance in 2023 for a chunk of that $17 million. Does that make sense? So the 2013 is a refunding issue for certificates of participation that is the majority of what is paid from the half-cent sales tax money. So that's $1 million between now and 2024. And then that drops down to about $350,000 for those last 5 years on the 2020 to 2029. The refunding of the neighborhood improvement district bonds that were approved last year have an annual debt payment of $160,000 which a portion of that is paid from the special assessments in the district. That provides about $60,000 to $65,000 of that money. The rest of the $160,000 is provided for by general fund at this time. The 2017 certificates of participation also has parks pieces to it. And so those payments are paid out of the park sales tax and property tax monies at about $321,000 and are paid in full in September of 2033. And so from 2029 to 2033, those last 4 years is just parks money to pay off that 2017 issue. The parks also has a 2014 issue on the community center roof that pays off in 2024. So there's also some lease payments. We just finished the lease payment on the fire truck. So that one is finished as of fiscal year 21. The street sweeper has an annual lease payment of about $52,000. So there's 3 payments left on it. The records management system for the police department is at $64,300 and pays off in 2022, and that is general fund money. And then the fitness equipment lease, which is paid from the parks monies, pays off in 2022, and it is about $14,000 a year.
So do we, that street sweeper there in 2023, do we own it, or is that a
Yes.
lease like you're thinking of a car lease?
No, that's got $1 purchase at the end of it. So that becomes ours. If its life is, can be extended.
Yeah.
We take really good care of it.
Yeah.
So to answer some of Councilmember Brooks's questions on when things start to drop off, you know, I think he alluded to the fact that in 23 and 24, we start to lose some of these payments. But the big piece of it doesn't happen until 2029 and after. So the last piece of the outstanding debt that we currently had is for water pollution control. Those are state revolving money, so those are low interest loans that we were afforded. And those payments run about $1 million for that are paid in 2027 for the 2007 issue, and just under or right at $500,000 to $550,000 for the direct loan series, which is also through the state revolving system, to pay off in 2030. Any questions on the outstanding debt?
Is there any strategy we can start looking at so that, at least in long term, where we can start paying for more of this stuff cash instead of leasing everything? And because I mean, because we're paying interest on everything we borrow money for, and that's bleeding us over time. And I know that Harold brought up that as a general rule, communities don't like to see their city government sitting on a lot of money to do that kind of thing. But is there any strategy or intention that or possibility that we can start planning to reduce our debt load over time?
We can work towards that. The challenge that we run into, Councilmember Brooks, is the revenue sources that we have available to us. You know, so because the city is so dependent on sales tax revenue, until we can see some major increases in that, or again, we're talking about borrowing money to extend the debt service levy today with these projects, you know, or something else goes on the ballot to we've talked about the public safety sales tax. And so until we can free up other monies, if you will, that is going to be the challenge with going to a cash basis to fund some of this. And ideally, that's kind of what you want to do, especially if you've got something for a 5-year window. If you can do the cash for yourself over that 5 years instead of borrowing it for 5 years, naturally, you know, you're in a little bit better shape. But unfortunately, all of our vehicles cost as much or more than a new one, you know, and so as our fleet ages, then you play the cards as, do I spend more money on maintenance to keep the fleet going, or do I go on and bite the bullet and spend a chunk of cash or use a lease payment to provide for new vehicles, as an example?
Like when we bought the fire truck though, I mean, we did it off a bond issue, but then we had the cash to pay it. And I think the interest we were paying on the bonds is a lot less than the interest we would have paid to finance the fire truck.
Right, and by doing that up front, they also gave us like 3.5% off the price of the trucks.
So I mean, so we are borrowing money, which I agree that, you know, borrowing money in your personal life is probably not the best decision, but business and government, sometimes that's the only way it works. Yeah.
And so as we go forward, you know, and again, if you see revenues change and increase, and you authorize, as our citizens authorize more revenue streams, then those pieces can be paid for with cash based on that revenue piece instead of having to borrow the money to pay over time.
Did I miss, when does the our payments on the Hawthorne project drop off? What was that?
Those are,
Was that in the, did I miss that when did you
Yeah,
mention
that's
it?
the neighborhood improvement districts.
Oh,
So
okay.
if we back up here to this slide, can you see that slide? Yeah. Oh, no. Forward.
I'm seeing lots of slides.
One more. Gary, one more. There we go. So the 2019 refunding that we did for the Hawthorne project for the neighborhood improvement.
Okay, yeah,
Okay, so those pay off in 2031,
okay.
which we didn't extend that time. I think that was the original time.
We refinanced it, if I remember correctly, to get take advantage of the rates at the time, right?
Correct. We were able to refinance that to reduce the rates, reduce the payment, but not extend the time.
Yeah, okay.
Other questions?
So I guess the good news is that we have things spaced out in such a way that as we move forward, other bond issues are going to drop off and it'll free up if we need to change tack and put another bond issue out. Does that sound fair?
That's correct.
As well as we have additional bonding capacity if we wanted to have a tax increase rather than a no tax increase.
Right. And so, to Casey's point just now, takes us into the debt capacity. So everything that you've heard today is to maintain the 59-cent debt service levy that we have right now for an additional 20 years. So that takes it out to 2041. Okay. And then, our actual total capacity is based on our assessed values. So there's a 20% constitutional debt capacity based on the assessed valuation. So we have up to 42, almost $43 million that we could issue. Okay, and so, but to do that means that the voters and the citizens would have to pay an additional tax levy. That would increase that levy significantly, to do that gamut, or any variation of anything over that $17 million piece. Right now, as we're talking about that, is going to require an increase. And the way I understand it is that part of what we told them in 2017 was we were going to do this and we wanted to do this again in a few years without having to increase that levy, just to maintain your taxes as what they are. This slide talks about the outstanding debt that's currently there for our existing 2017 to get you that capacity at $42.8 million. So Danielle talked about the options, and this just kind of reviews that. So without the personal property tax and the real estate as it is now, the current levy is 59 cents per $100 to get about $1 million a year. Okay, a little over when you factor in a little bit of inflation. So to do a 5-year option, it's like a $4 million maximum. You would issue $2 million in 21 and $2 million in 22. To do 8.5 millions over 10 years is $4 million in 21 and $4.5 million in 22. And then to do what we've suggested and maximizing our opportunities for grants and this and that to issue the 17 million, you would issue 4 million in 2021 and then the remaining 13 million in 2022, because in November of 2022 is when your debt levy would reduce should you not issue any more monies at all. And then you would go back to the voters asking for an actual increase if you were to issue that later. So the whole purpose of this is to maintain things status quo and keep the existing revenues as they are. Now, if you were to add the personal property tax to that, it generates another $225,000 to $250,000 on the existing 59-cent levy. And so again, this just runs through the options so that you have an extra million in 5 years, it takes the 10-year point to a maximum of 11 million and the 20-year point to 21.5 million. So that's about $4 million more, $4.5 million more if we were to ask the voters to include the personal property tax.
But didn't that max us out on real bonds?
No, because you've got $42 million.
This will be less than half our bonding capacity.
Right.
We can do 42
Yeah,
million, we're gonna ask for 17.
It seems like if we're ever going to have to take on debt with the rates being where they are, I think this is probably the best time for us to do it.
Correct.
And I think the timing that it's a no tax increase way, this is the most logical and easiest way to get this passed. That's why we want to lock it in for as long as we can,
Right.
In my opinion, for the 20 years.
Mhm.
And the citizens did say that they were willing to pay the tax. They've already been paying it, and so they are willing to pay it. So I think they'd be willing to renew it, to pay it going forward, is what your taxpayers have told you, based on the citizen surveys.
And also, for what it's worth, I like the idea that we're extending the tax out to when the bond would actually be paid off instead of setting up debt and not necessarily having the income set aside to pay for it.
Correct. My recommendation will never, and I don't use the word never very often, but I can say I would never recommend a bond issue that would take out debt payments further than what your revenue stream is scheduled to pay for. So,
And yet past councils have done it.
right. And we can't change that. We can just manage it and go forward with it.
Yep.
And that's part of our plan is to renew that 0.5-cent sales tax, back to your conversation earlier about asking for our equipment and this and that and paying for cash. That would be the purpose of that 0.5-cent sales tax, because that 0.5-cent capital improvement sales tax is for capital improvements. So you can use it for streets, you can use it for equipment, you can use it for buildings, you can use it for storms. I mean, that 0.5-cent capital is got a complete gamut involved in that. And the citizens have paid that for a while. They've renewed it at least once that I know of. And so we would ask them to renew it again, to maintain the existing revenue stream, to finish paying the existing debt, and to provide for those future projects as you see a 10-year plan of capital coming forward.
Is there a way for us to make that permanent?
Yes, that would be the question on the ballot when it's asked to be renewed. Is it would just not, or I think the last ballot said a 0.5-cent sales tax up to this point, where it would just ask you to renew a 0.5-cent sales tax and not specify an expiration date.
Remind me, Marcella, about the stormwater funding issues. If I remember right, we talked one time before about whether it can be a utility or if it can be an assessment when people build stuff to get the stormwater better.
There is several pieces of opportunity to do stormwater management, to fund it. Utility is one piece, and everybody struggles with how you would measure that, and then it becomes a tax because it's just a portion of your surface runoff. There's a name for that.
Surface area.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so there's this stormwater / parks sales tax is what is in existence right now, and the city of Warrensburg has designated that money, that piece of, those pieces of that money to go towards parks.
Okay.
There's a little bit of capacity left in that. Matthew, do you know what that is by chance?
No.
Yeah, and I think that was in that September 2020 meeting when we talked about how much capacity was left in the stormwater / parks sales tax. But if parks wants that money and they get that money first, it's really hard to go back and change that.
Okay.
But there's some assessments, there's a utility, there's just a stormwater tax that becomes a flat fee that is taxed, can
When
be
would we
taxed.
want to look into that, because sooner or later, we're gonna have to attack stormwater.
Right,
There's no way around that.
exactly. Along with a lot of other
Yeah,
organizations across the nation. You know, everybody's kind of exploring that, and the conversations I have is like, how are you thinking about doing this? And it's like, how are you managing that? And it's like, well, right now it's in our street projects, and we try to fund that through those pieces. And
otherwise, we're waiting on somebody's plan that works.
exactly.
Okay, I'm just trying to keep that
That's
open.
another work session.
That is
That's
another work session.
Okay, we'll have another one.
Well, I'll add it to our list.
You need more note paper.
So back where we kind of left off, to recap, the 2017 series that was issued, those bonds were authorized and issued at the April 4th, 2017 election. 3.5 million of that was for streets for a 5-year window, and a little over 2,050,000 for the fire department projects. So the street portion, like I said, is amortized over 5 years. It pays off in 2022. And then the fire portion is amortized over the 10 years with the maturity of 2027. So to issue our $17 million, that's the reason why we have it split up, is because you would not have a bond payment due until after the 2022 payoff of the 5-year window, and would have that revenue available in 23 through 27, and then issue the rest of it in 23, to just tack on to that, so that you're generating the same amount of money. Make sense? So the 2017 question was in 2 pieces, because it was under 2 parts. It was to ask for the $2,050,000 to acquire the fire vehicles and et cetera, and to ask for the $3.5 million to construct and extend the improvements for the street and roads. That's what was asked for and passed in 2017. The 2021 options, we've talked about this session to work through the projects in the levy. The November 11th, the January 11th first reading of the bond authorization, and the January 19th second reading for the election authorization, because that is to be sent and in the county clerk's office by January the 26th for the filing deadline for April 2021. That election day is April the 6th. So the suggested question we have right now is, shall the council and the city of Warrensburg be authorized to issue general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed 17 million to acquire rights of way, construct, extend, and improve streets and roads in the city? And so it doesn't, if you put the words Maguire in it, then you're kind of tied to, you have to do Maguire. And if we were to not get the matching monies, then we would be strapped to do the Maguire piece at $17 million. Does that make sense?
I agree not to pin it down to any one specific.
Absolutely. And streets and roads could be bridges, could be any type of infrastructure associated with streets in any way, shape, or form.
Correct.
So do we need, I know it says streets and roads, but do we need to add the word sidewalk in there? Because when that first portion that Danielle presented, it sounds like there's a swing there, and that swing sounds like it's more about sidewalks, because there was an increase in the happiness of traffic flow, but there was a decrease when you said sidewalks. And so do we need to add the word sidewalk in there just to cover our bases? Are the streets and roads cover the word, can't make sidewalks part of that?
I don't know that one off the top of my head.
That would be
I know they're under the same statute, so you can do them as one question. But if you have to add the word sidewalks in there, I'd have to do some research and get back tomorrow.
Okay,
Yeah, that would be a bond council question.
right.
just to make sure
That's definitely part of my concern, because I think the sidewalks it appears the citizens are concerned about the sidewalks, and I am too, so.
Right. And I know there's been discussion in other organizations with like the transportation sales tax. So we talked a little bit about that there's a 0.5 cent specific transportation sales tax that we could ask the citizens for. That would include sidewalks,
Right.
and so that funding is specifically for construction of roads and sidewalks, based on the statute for that particular sales tax piece. But we can check with bond council just to see if we need to add sidewalks, if sidewalks is gonna hurt us or not.
Okay.
To put that in.
Does fair ballot language apply to municipal elections? And if so, do we know how that would read? You know, would it specifically say, you know, this is a no tax increase issue?
Typically, we don't
Okay.
put the,
Okay, we
that
don't, but
language-
is it even allowed in a municipal election?
I don't know that it is.
Okay, I wasn't for sure.
Yeah.
So we just have to sell it as a no tax increase bond, but it's not gonna say that specifically on the issue itself or the fair ballot.
Right.
The school bond,
Well, but it was,
have no tax for it in there?
I think it was in the,
I think it was in November.
Right, yeah, it wasn't the
Yeah.
last
That's
one.
what we're pulling it from, and they may not do it in municipal. But we could,
right,
Yeah,
but we can also find that out.
I
If
know
we-
last April, the Summit passed a no tax
Mhm.
or no increased one, and they didn't have it in their language, but they had it advertised within
Right.
a million.
yeah, it's all,
Yeah.
that's how we would sell it. But
Mhm.
when you go to the ballot, they need to know what they're gonna do before they get to the ballot.
Right. Yeah.
Right, so your education pieces is this is not
Right.
necessarily gonna cost you any more money, you know, based on what you're paying right now.
Yep.
Other questions?
Yeah. I was just gonna, there are no more questions, just to remind you all what the discussion points are this evening is, first of all, do we want to include the personal property tax, which would be an increase? Or do we want to leave it as the straight renewal of just what we already have on real property? And then the second question is, how long do we want to go? Do we want to do the 20 years, 10 years, or 5 years?
I know I'm in favor of 20. You know, I would say we go no increase as far as the property tax fees. And the reason why I say that is because right now, we know of 3 that are possibly going to be on this April election for taxes. So I think to have a chance for them to pass, I think if all 3 of them were increased, the people make a waiver. I'm not paying 3 to new taxes.
Yes,
Where
sir.
if they're only paying 1 new tax and the other 2 are basically what you've already been paying, I think they'll swallow that better.
No, I think it leaves 4.1 million on the table.
Yes.
You know, 17 million versus 21.5.
That too.
But I agree with Brian in that I think the best way to do this time is a no tax
Mhm.
increase and then finance it for the 20 years.
I agree.
That's my,
And again, you've got plenty of bonding capacity if we come along and something else happens.
Yep.
And we need to go to the voters and ask for an increase, because that would be what would happen, is we would ask them for an increase because we're gonna have to borrow more money to do something else that we didn't anticipate.
and then there's smaller ones rolling off, you know,
Right.
in a few years and then in 9 years. So that we'll have a little bit there that we should do a no tax increase, or, you know, we could up it if we want to try to sell that.
No, Mr. Mayor, to answer your question, I pretty much knew when I came in it would be the 20-year no increase, so I was just listening to everybody else's wisdom on. I would like to ask the gentleman who represents the bond company, what's anticipated rate, interest rate? I know that you can't give and et cetera, but I do agree with Councilman Brooks on, I'm somebody that's not a fan of debt, because that's our money going out to the banking industry, which, you know, has fine people, but I'd rather see it in Warrensburg. But rates right now are attractive because the Fed has to keep it down so America doesn't go bankrupt. But it's a different level of conversation.
Yeah, so right now, rates to borrow general obligation bonds for municipalities such as yourselves are at or very near the lowest they've been at least since World War II.
Right, but what's an estimated number though?
Yeah, so for a 20-year bond, for our projections to help come up with these numbers, we used 2.25% for the Series 20, for the first issuance, then we,
Yeah.
then we increase that to 2 3/4 just to provide some cushion since there would be more time for that second issuance in 2022. And I know this sounds crazy, but those are somewhat conservative estimates.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem.
So what do you need from us? Just general conversation, or do you need us to kind of all?
General direction.
I think we have our general direction here. What I'm hearing is that you all would like to see ballot language for 17 million. We want to check and make sure that if we need specific language regarding sidewalks, that we get that in there. And then we'll double check on that fair ballot language to Casey, Councilmember Lund, and we will, if we can do something in that regard, we will get that to you guys in a memo on January 11th. And again, we will just have the first reading on January 11th. We will have a special council meeting on January 19th at 4:30.
I think that might be a problem because, well, okay, no, you're right. Okay, we'll have one more week. I just want to be sure we get it to the county in that time. But we'll be okay.
Right, so it'll be the same day as
All
our
right,
candidates.
right.
So we'll have a special council meeting then on
Okay.
January 19th at 4:30. And then we'll also have another, and that's when we'll do the second reading to move forward with this question.
The only request I have is, I want to make sure that the study that was done, the latest one project, is easily on the link. I need to review it because I wasn't on council at the time it was done, and I want to be able to send people to that. And just so the data's there for anybody that wants to.
Along those lines, Councilmember Holmberg, we are working to get a web page together that does have all these studies on there, as well as the presentation that was made on September 23rd in 2019, September 14th in 2020. We're going to build a page that's going to be our education piece for this ballot measure. And I know Chief Lockhart and I have had some pretty good conversations about what our communication plan and what our education plan can be for this. And so we might try to put a precursor together for you and maybe do a preview of that at the January 11th meeting as well. So,
Thank you.
yeah, absolutely. Okay. That's all I needed this evening.
I got one more question.
Yeah.
Don't get mad at me. Can we put on the public safety tax discussion sometime in the near future so that we can get it moving? I know it has to go to legislature. They're out and everything, and we're not looking until 22, but we need to, if we're gonna do that, I think we need to.
I'll take as many Monday nights as you'll give me, Councilmember Kushner. No, we definitely need to start having a conversation about that. I think Marcella and I can, go ahead, Marcella.
Okay, so just to interject a little bit, I reached out to our representative and was advised because the city of Clinton and the city of Lincoln already have that question pre-filed in the legislation to discuss. So I've asked for an amendment to that, to add Warrensburg to that as well.
Okay.
So I haven't gotten a response back, but as soon as I get a response that yes, they are willing to amend that, or if Representative Hawks will say, yes, I will, put a bill forward for Warrensburg, whichever, but that was the suggestion that his office made, was that we ask for an amendment to that, the existing bill that's been pre-filed to add Warrensburg to Clinton and Lincoln. They're in the general area. That representative actually does part of a little corner of Warrensburg as well. So as soon as I know, we'll let you know.
And by next year, I think I hope the flavor will be better for, I know those guys, but I I believe all of them that have gone forward have passed in Missouri, so.
And the several that the county, the two that I can think of that the county's done has easily passed in the county, so
Yeah.
And
that's,
we have, both of our departments are exceptional, you know,
Right.
but, you know, from the fire with the ISO rating and the police with how we've handled things, you know, the last several years. So I think that would be a very popular way for us to, you know, get some more things done.
correct. And again, go back to Councilmember Brooks's point of trying to pay for cash.
Yeah.
You know, so
Right.
as soon as we free up some operations money, or we dedicate that sales tax money to provide for equipment that are needed for the departments, then, you know, that's where that money would go.
Awesome. Keep digging.
There's a pot of gold somewhere down
I know
there.
there's gotta be something or something.
Just out of curiosity, how many people were on Zoom today?
There are 6 attendees.
Okay.
Most of them by city employees.
Darn, I was excited for a second there.
Gosh darn it. Mr. Matthew Cordy, representing our financial advisors from Piper Jaffrey and something.
And company.
And
And company, yeah.
So are you saying the only way we can get people to watch this is by paying them?
Hope not.
He's in attendance though, so.
So bond council will put together the language that will be presented to you at the January 11th meeting.
All right. Unless somebody's got something else, I think we're adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Happy New Year.
Yes.